Welcome to Beyond the Syllabus, where we talk with superintendents, curriculum leaders, and education innovators who are rethinking what school can be and how it can better serve the academic and personal needs of every learner. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Syllabus podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. John Mulford, the superintendent of Fayetteville Public Schools. John's got 29 years of experience leading both public and private education systems, holding key roles from deputy superintendent in Missouri's largest school district to superintendents in multiple school districts across the area as well. John, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise, Mike, happy to have you. John, you've held key roles in small districts, large districts, private, public. What are the pros of each that you might not get in the other?
For me, it was just a different experience and an opportunity to lead in different ways. In a small district, you're going to be very connected to really everybody, to students, teachers, staff, family, community members, and have an intimate knowledge of what's going on in really about every classroom. So that would certainly be a pro to a smaller district, more of a sense of community often. One high school that the community rallies around, and often the school is the main focal point of the community. And then when you get to a larger district, you don't always have those intimate experiences. You don't have the time or the capability to be in every classroom on a regular basis. But the growth that comes as a leader in leading a large organization, and quite frankly, leading other leaders, is something that I truly value in my, from my time in Springfield.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, the clear difference is just the ability to see everyone all the time, be everywhere all the time. Obviously, just not as possible when you have, 15,000 people you're dealing with as opposed to a couple thousand, right?
Right.
So take us back to the beginning here. 29 years you've spent in education. That's a lot of time, right? What got you here? Why are you here?
Yeah. So, my dad is a minister. So I grew up in a family that was all about serving other people. And so that's just kind of what we did. And I always knew I wanted to go into a profession where I could serve others, see people grow, help support them. And I just get a lot of satisfaction from that. And I always enjoyed school. So throughout my teenage years, I kind of thought, hey, teaching and coaching is something I think I want to do. And that's kind of how I got into education. And so I started off in a private Christian school, did that for 5 years, and filled a lot of roles because it's a small school. And so I taught basically all core content at the high school level, all subject areas. And I also served as the principal of the small school. And then I had the opportunity to go to my alma mater, West Plains School District in West Plains, Missouri. And so I went there as a math teacher and a coach. And so I did that for 4 years before moving into administration. I really had the goal of just being a head football coach and teaching and really didn't have any plans to go into administration. But as I completed my master's degree, I thought, maybe one day I would want to do that. I'm not ready now, but maybe one day. And then I had someone I consider a mentor who is a principal who came to me and said, hey, I have an assistant principal opening. I want you to really consider it. And so I did. And that's kind of how I got here. So, I was assistant principal at a middle school for 2 years, then had the opportunity to become high school principal of my alma mater, and made that move. And then 1 year later, had the opportunity to become assistant superintendent of that district. And then after doing that for 4 years, had the opportunity to become superintendent of that same district. So all in my hometown. So, my first 21 years was in my hometown of West Plains, Missouri, where I was able to serve as superintendent, and that was very rewarding. Smaller district. So we kind of talked about that already. I was able to be in every building, every week, every classroom, every week. I knew the culture and the climate well because it was my home district. And so that's a very unique leading experience. And then I had the opportunity to go up towards St. Louis was superintendent for 3 years at Merrimack Valley School District, which was similar in size, but I didn't have that same intimate knowledge, right? So that was a good growth opportunity because I had to slow down a little bit and really learn the community and what they valued, and kind of take time to make those connections before just plowing forward. And so that was a growth opportunity for me as a leader, when you go into a new place, of really taking time to learn about the people, their hopes, their dreams, their wishes, what they want to see for their school district. But it was small enough I could still be in every building every week, every classroom every week. And so that was really good. Then the door opened to go to Springfield, Missouri, which is Missouri's largest district of about 25,000 kids. And I was deputy superintendent of operations there. And so, I have wondered, is a large district for me? And so this was the opportunity. My kids were in Springfield at the time, so it just made sense. And that was a great experience. Really, again, just another opportunity to grow as a leader. And I mentioned it earlier, but the biggest difference there is you're leading other leaders so that they can lead down at the building and departmental level. And so I got to work under Dr. Granita Lathan, who came from Houston, Texas to Springfield. And Houston is one of the country's largest districts. And so to her, Springfield was small, but to me, it was large. So been learning under her, she was just a tremendous benefit for me, and seeing how she led other leaders and coached them and set strategic plans and initiatives really helped me as I then transitioned to Arkansas. So after 26 years in Missouri, I retired in Missouri, came just a couple hours south to Arkansas, and I'm in my third year now as superintendent of the Fayetteville School District, and it's been a great experience. Fayetteville's about 10,000 kids, so kind of in between. We still only have one high school, so we do have that. It's too large for me to be in every classroom every week, but it is small enough that we still have one high school community rallies around, which is really awesome.
That's cool.
And so it's been really good. I still make a priority of being in the building. So here I'm in every building every 3 weeks and try to be in as many classrooms as possible while I'm there. And that's helped me learn a lot about the community.
That's awesome. I appreciate the whole context there. As someone who grew up in a 50,000 student district with like 12 high schools, the idea of having one high school that everyone rallies around is interesting. And as I explore different parts of the country, and we start working with different districts, all different sizes, it's interesting perspective, and the perspective of your colleague who came from Houston, thinking that the Missouri district was small relative to you thinking that it was large, is a pretty funny contrast there.
Right.
That's great. So, okay, you talk about 21 years in Missouri, 26 years, or no, was it 26 years?
This is my 29th year total, 26 total in Missouri.
Yep, 26 in Missouri, now 3 here in Arkansas. So 29 total. What keeps you passionate about this? Right? I mean, that's a long time for energy to keep going. You're a fiery guy. What gets you out of bed every morning?
The thing that keeps me focused is the intrinsic reward I get from helping people or organizations get from here to there, right? And so one of the biggest mistakes I see leaders make, I would say in all professions, but certainly in education, is trying to bring in their own vision or goals to an organization. And, when I first came to Fayetteville, people would ask me that all the time. What is your vision for Fayetteville? And, I would often say, well, I don't know that I can fully answer that, because my vision is going to be the vision Fayetteville has for themselves. And I need to take time to hear from people to learn what that is so that I can help guide us. But, at the end of the day, my broader vision is that we're a district of choice. We're the district that people want to be in, whether that's teachers want to teach in, staff want to work in, parents want their kids raised in. That's what my vision. Now, the details of that depend upon what I hear from the community. And so, we had 35 or 36 community engagement sessions within the first 6 months I was here. where we just
Wow.
asked a lot of questions and tried to learn what is it that you're proud of? What is it that you think we can do better? And, what is it that you want to see from us in the future? And then we use that information to update our strategic plan and lay out a course of action that is now guiding the work. So right now we have a lot of things in motion in Fayetteville, a lot of exciting things. And that's what motivates me every day is that, I want to help the community of Fayetteville get to where they want to be.
I think that's an incredibly humble and, dare I say, unique perspective to have on leading, right? You're not coming into this role, into this job thinking, no, this is what we're going to do. You're going in, you're listening to the community, seeing what they want to do. And then as the leader, you'll figure out how you're going to help get them there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I hope it's not unique. I think that's the right way to do it, right? But yet I do see leaders make that mistake. And quite frankly, when I went from West Plains to Merrimack Valley, I made that mistake because I was used to a community that I knew very well. And so I could move very quickly. And, I came into Merrimack Valley with some ideas and learned very quickly that, hey, just because I think it's a good idea doesn't mean the community does. So I had to pause and slow down a little bit. And that has definitely helped shape me as I've moved into other leadership roles.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, in the startup world, we would call that like customer discovery, right? We can't solve a problem for our customers if we don't know the problem from their side, right? So that's really interesting. And, they say the best leaders listen more than half the time. So this is the third episode now that I'll say you've got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. I got to start naming these things that, right? So that's awesome. So let's transition into this idea of leadership. You were a coach for many, many years, right?
Yes.
How do you compare the style of leadership that you personally took in being a coach, being a teacher, and now being an administrator, a district leader?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. So, there's all kinds of different terminologies that we can throw out around leadership, but at the end of the day, for me, it's all about service. I'm big on being a servant leader. And to me, being a servant leader means that we are going to give whatever is needed to those we're serving to help, meet the need, help them be successful. And that's the approach I took when I coached athletics. I was not a yeller or screamer. I wasn't this is my way and you have to like it type of thing. It was more about what are the strengths of our players? How can we play to those strengths? And how can we help them be the best version of themselves that they can be? And I'm very much big on coaching people up. And I take that same approach in my educational leadership role of coaching people up, find out what they're good at, help them develop those strengths, and help put other pieces around them to fill in the gaps. And so, very similar approaches for me. I've certainly grown and changed over the years, I'm sure, but I think good leaders are adaptable. I think we draw on all the different aspects of leadership when it's needed, but then we have a general approach that we take. And that general approach for me is that servant leader.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And you mentioned adaptability, right? I mean, whether that's adaptability across different teams, across different environments, but also across individual people, right? Each player, each student, each administrator, whoever it is that you're leading requires something different from you, right?
Uh-huh.
And the best coaches in my life were the ones who were able to understand the needs of each individual contributor and how they can best resonate with that individual person.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you can observe that, how coaches take different approaches with different players at times,
Yep.
but it's because they know what motivates that kid, right? I think about
Exactly.
my own kids, my daughter, who was a pretty good athlete, did not respond well to a coach who yelled at her.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a pleaser. And so she wanted to do well for the coach. And if the coach yelled, then she felt like she wasn't pleasing, and that actually did not help her perform.
Yep.
Now, if that coach encouraged her and said, hey, I know you're able to do this, you need to focus on this, that, she was going to go out and give it all she got. Now, I think of one of her coaches who as a player was the opposite of my daughter, right?
Mm.
She was the type of player when she played that if the coach got onto her pretty hard, her mentality was, well, I'm going to show that coach how good I
Yep.
really am, right?
Yep.
So they were wired completely different, but the coach figured out my daughter and knew how to work with her. And I think people are like that. Everybody's different. They need a different approach. And that's our challenge as leaders is how do we give them what they need? And it's the same thing with the student in the classroom, right? Think about the best teachers you had. The best teachers you had got to know each student.
Yep.
And figured out what motivated them and what helped them want to do well.
Yep. 100%. And you made the segue for me, right? Same way that translates between a coach and a player translates for a teacher and a student, right?
Yeah.
I know it's funny you mentioned your daughter and her response to yelling and then another player's response to yelling. Same experience on my high school basketball team, right? Some of us, if our coach got in our face and yelled at us, we'd double down and we'd show them up, right? In the respectful way, of course.
Right.
But the other half of the players, if you got in their face and yelled at them, they'd shut down, right? And that just was the complete wrong way to approach them. So understanding that for each person is crucial. So let's talk more about this idea, this topic in the classroom, right? How does that translate for a teacher understanding a student, not just on an academic level, right? Not just understanding strengths, weaknesses, whatever, but also on a personal level, right? How does this teacher resonate with the student?
Yeah. Well, of course, there's always boundaries, that you want to maintain, professional boundaries. But, taking time to build relationships with students is something that we emphasize quite heavily here in Fayetteville and really the other districts I've been in. So we do participate with a program called Capturing Kids' Hearts. You might have heard of it. And so we've been doing that for several years now. But the idea is that before you can reach a kid academically, they have to know that you care about them and that you're there to support them. And so we really try to drive home the importance of building a positive culture and taking time, especially at the beginning of the year, to establish a safe space in your classroom and to get to know kids and to let them get to know you a little bit so that you can find out what does motivate them and better support them along the way. So something that I tell our principals that is probably contrary to what most would say is that, you should take the first 3 to 5 days of school just getting to know your kids. Now that can involve some academic component of getting to know where they're at in the particular content area. But the worst thing you could do is jump right in and start assigning homework, right?
Yep.
Some people think we have limited time. We got to do as much as we can. But in my opinion, if you invest your first 3 to 5 days in a relationship, you'll more than be able to make up that time throughout the school year by the buy-in that you're going to create with kids. And I think that goes even beyond the classroom. That's with your staff, with everybody, right? So you can underestimate the importance of culture. Yeah. And if your culture is not right, you're spinning your wheels on everything else.
You just gave me chills. I couldn't agree with that more, right? And that translates sports, work, school, whatever it is. But you have to invest that time up front, right? Because otherwise things are going to get difficult, right? It's going to be testing season, or it's going to be the playoffs, or it's going to be the end of a quarter, whatever it is, whatever environment you're in, things are going to get stressful. And if you don't have the foundation of those relationships to lean on in those times, then you're not going to be efficient. You're not going to make progress the way you want to, right? And I completely agree with the sentiment that if you invest those 3, 4, 5 days up front, build those strong relationships, those relationships will far make up that time spent later on.
Yep. So and it all goes back to trust, right?
Right.
So you have to have established those relationships so that when your staff is struggling, they have trust that they can come to you, that you're going to listen and that you're going to be willing to help them. Likewise, your students have to trust that they can come to you as a teacher or a principal with whatever they are struggling with, and that you're going to help and support them. And so that's why the relationship is so important. It's about establishing trust from the get-go.
100%. And that idea of trust, you mentioned too, the idea of a teacher caring about a student. Now I spend so much of my time in classrooms with teachers and students. It's clear the teachers who make that investment.
Yeah.
Right. And it is a pretty clear line of the stronger teachers and the ones who aren't quite there yet. Right. It's that relationship with students and the trust that students have in their teacher, because kids know that. Kids can feel that.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree with you. And, in my experiences, you could take someone who instructionally is more middle of the road, but really good at the relationship side. And what will happen with what the kids produce is way up here. Likewise, you can take someone instructionally that has all the right tools, but doesn't build the relationships, and their kids perform middle of the road or lower. So, to me, it has to start with culture and relationships.
Completely agree. And I think what we're kind of talking about without saying it is this idea of personalization, differentiation, individualization, right? Each student is their own person. And the more that a teacher can know who each person is, the more well-equipped they are to handle that classroom. And so I'm curious, do you guys at Fayetteville think about personalized learning beyond just investing that time? Do you think of it instructionally? And if so, what are some ways that you guys have started to implement some of that?
Yeah, so certainly we do think of it instructionally as well. I think you probably see it at the elementary level a whole lot more than as you get up in upper grades, which is probably pretty common. But we do a lot of small group instruction at the elementary level based on what students need. We also do some individualized instruction depending on the circumstances and the situation. So we do buy into the belief that students should always receive grade level content. And then you try to fill in the gaps if they're below grade level through some of that smaller group personalized instruction. So we definitely use some software tools that also provide that personalized instruction. As a district, we're trying to move away from over-reliance on technology, get back to some of the fine motor skills and social skills that kids need these days. But we still want to use technology when it enhances the learning. And so that is our focus right now, is paring back what we have, but keeping the things that are really going to take learning to the next level.
I think that's an important distinction, right? Between a digital tool that is simply turning something that could be on paper onto a screen versus a digital tool or technology that is actually enhancing the experience pedagogically.
Right. No, I agree with you. And I think what as always happens, right, with technology or any kind of resource, often we use it because it makes the adult's life easier, right? And I think there's some value into that, especially operationally on the operational side, things like grading, things like that for teachers. I think that makes sense. But that should not be the primary reason we use technology. And I think that's kind of where we've gotten to, is a lot of what we use is just because it makes the adult's life easier, but doesn't necessarily improve learning. And so now with some of the data around screen time and the impacts on students, especially younger and middle-aged students, we've decided to say, okay, we're going to pare that back, and we're going to just focus on technology when it really helps the learning process.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I forget what the number is, but on average, a district has like some insane amount of technology tools that they have under contract, but only use what percentage of it, right? Yeah. So I think that distinction and then kind of filtering out based on what is actually making that impact is super important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
How do you guys...
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Say this past year, we did institute some technology limits based on grade level. And we kind of taking that and moving forward again next year with that. And that has really seemed to help. And I think it's what that's done, especially at the lower grades, has helped our teachers prioritize. They know they need to stay within a certain limit. So they use the tools that they feel are going to make the biggest difference for the kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I feel like I have a good feel of kind of different technology initiatives, how you guys are thinking about tech. How does AI play into this? right? Obviously, when you say tech now, maybe AI is implied, but how are you guys thinking about AI specifically?
Yeah, so right now we are in the process of developing an AI plan for our district. So we went through a visioning process this past year. We partnered with a third party group to come in and help lead us in that work, engage the community, including our students, pretty significantly, and have developed a vision that was actually just presented to our board last month. So the next step is we're working on a district policy around AI, and then we'll be laying out the plan, and hopefully we'll have that finalized in the fall. So that said, I think our approach to AI is going to be a similar to what I've already described, where we know AI is here. We know students are going to be expected to know how to use AI when they get out in the real world. And so we want to balance that with the learning that needs to occur. And we want to produce a student who has the background knowledge they need to take the AI and really excel with it. And so, I've had the opportunity to talk to some professionals who live in the world of AI and who've been on the forefront. And, kind of the common thing that I hear from them is there's two groups of people that are going to be left behind. The resistors who say, oh, we shouldn't be doing it. And the early adopters who just go heads in, but don't really have the understanding of what the AI is doing so that they can recognize when the AI is messing up or there's inaccurate information or what have you. So they said the people that are going to be successful are going to be the ones that have both, right? They have the background knowledge, but they also know how to use the tool to enhance what knowledge they have. And so that's kind of our focus right now. And, trying to work with teachers on that and start some professional development around how they can use AI to enhance the learning, not replace it, but enhance the learning, and just trying to create that balance is where we're at.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think it's definitely a smart approach not to just nose dive in, right, without any understanding of where you are or what you're going to dive into, right? But approaching it with excitement, but also with some strategy and some intentionality there. That makes a lot of sense to me. So you talk about tech, AI, specifically you mentioned use of small groups, individualized learning, stuff like that. How do you guys think of tutoring? I know Arkansas has the LEARNS Act, right? And that's a tutoring initiative for districts, state funding, if I remember correctly. Are you guys involved in the LEARNS Act at all? Are you using those dollars?
Yeah, so the LEARNS Act is pretty broad. It actually includes a lot of things, more than we could talk about on this podcast. But one of those components is some tutoring funds that students who qualify for that have a designated amount. I believe it's $500 that they could use towards tutoring for an outside vendor. And there's a lot of different vendors that they can choose from. So we do have some students that qualify for that, and we communicate with those families, letting them know. The first year, we didn't see a lot of families take advantage of it. Last year, we saw a little bit more take advantage of it, and I think that will continue to grow. And then beyond that, we do have some tutoring opportunities that we provide. Looks a little different at each campus. One model that we have at our high school that I really like is we have a section of our high school called the Hub, but it's kind of a commons area. And we have a daily advisory time for the students. And students can go to the Hub, and we have a peer tutoring model set up there during advisory time. And so I really like that. It's something that's still relatively new, but I look forward to seeing that grow. And we're also talking about, of course, with the University of Arkansas right here, ways to bring college students in to do some kind of peer tutoring, but at a different level with some of our students. So we're exploring some of those things.
That's really cool. I like that. The Hub.
Yep.
That's a great name. So the $500 that a student can qualify for, that comes from LEARNS Act funding, right?
Correct.
And then is there funding that districts get to provide tutoring during the school day?
Let's see, I believe there is. I would have to go back and double check all that. But I think there is a limited pot of money to provide some additional support to the students who are identified. So the students are identified by the state level that qualify. And then we can provide that additional support during the day at a limited capacity.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, cool. Now, outside of Fayetteville, what is your broad perspective on how you're seeing AI unfold across the country, not just in education, but just in life in general?
Yeah, so it's going really fast, right? And one of the things we know about education is education typically doesn't move fast.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the technology world in particular, we're often playing catch up. And so what we know is AI is being used by students. It's being used by staff. And what we need to have is clear guidelines and policies around how we're going to use it and how we're going to train our staff to use it and how we're going to use it in an effective way. So we're definitely behind, but we feel like we're ahead of most districts in the process. And so, that's kind of where I think we're at. I think AI is moving very rapidly and quite frankly, faster than we're going to be able to move. Right. But we're going to do our best to kind of get in the game and make sure that we maintain a high quality academic program while also equipping students with what they need for, the workforce when they leave us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it almost feels counterintuitive to write specific policies just because things change so much. How are you guys going about that process?
Yeah. So that's a good point. And so we are taking the approach of more of a broader type of policy. So we've gathered policies from multiple districts, and then our third-party consultants that I mentioned earlier provided some sample policies. So we're kind of combing through that right now, creating our own that would be more broad. And then from that, we'll develop a plan that gets a little more specific, but then that plan will be reevaluated annually and updated as needed as technologies change.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that there's definitely a need for constant updates there and some broader language that more just provides general guidance rather than maybe specific parameters, if you will.
There are people who believe that with AI, the teacher might become obsolete. Now, I don't buy into that at all. Okay?
Yeah, I don't either.
And a couple reasons for that. Number one, if we're going to keep a school model like we have now, where you bring kids together, you're not going to put a bunch of minors together in front of a AI and no adult, right? So that's not going to happen. And if we didn't have school like we do now, and it was more online virtual, that's going to create a big hardship on families in the workforce. And I think we also learned through COVID that that's not an ideal model for most kids. So I think really it is all about how the teacher uses AI in the instructional process. And that's where we're going to focus most of our efforts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the teacher, if anything, is becoming more and more valuable because there needs to be someone there to facilitate those types of things, right? Do I think the role of a teacher will shift? Sure. I think the role of everyone will shift as technology continues to evolve. But the biggest thing that I cling on to as far as a teacher's involvement is what we talked about earlier, which is that relationship.
Yep.
Right. That trust needs to be there. That relationship needs to be there. There's something very emotional about learning. Right. And at least as it stands right now, I don't think AI or any technology is anywhere near capable of doing that like an actual human teacher is.
I agree with that. And I like that statement you made that, that learning is an emotional thing. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna have to use that. Thanks for saying
Go ahead, John. You don't even need to quote me.
All right.
So listen, you mentioned kind of, school model now, school model maybe as it could be. If you had to, let's put our creative modes on right now. In your most delusional world, what does education look like?
Yeah. So, well, that's a loaded question. I think there's a lot of things, right? But to me, number one, smaller student to teacher ratio.
Yep.
So that to me is the biggest hurdle that we face, but we have limited resources, right? So smaller student to teacher ratio and a more fluid type of daily schedule. All right. So I've never been a big fan of sit in a class for 50 minutes and then move to the next class. So a little more fluid where students are able to move to centers or stations or classrooms where they can get what they need. And so I'll kind of go back to me as a learner. Um, Most classes I took, I was pretty good at school. Okay. I'm not going to say I'm smart, but I was good at school. Um,
Oh, come
most,
on now, John. Don't be modest.
most classes I took was kind of like, tell me the basics and then I can do the rest. Right. And so if I had 15, 20 minutes with the teacher and then I could go over here to this quiet space and just do the work, that would have been ideal for me. Now I know other kids, it's not that way. Right. So I think a model that is more fluid like that, where kids can uh, pull on locations or resources that they need for them. And then if they need more time with the teacher, they can get more time with the teacher with less people around. And that way it's less daunting and that kind of thing. So something a little more fluid with smaller student teacher ratios. I'm big on experiential learning. So more hands-on experiences, immersion into the community. That's something we're doing right now in Fayetteville, actually. So all of our buildings K through 6, which we have 12, we are working towards each one of those being themed schools within the next 5 years. So they'll have a building-wide theme that is interwoven into all the curriculum that will involve experiences with the kids that are not only on site, but within our community. And so we've already taken a step in that direction. We have a couple of middle school programs going on right now where they have a weekly experience that is related to the theme. And so experiential learning that immerses kids into the resources within their community and brings meaning to what they're learning. So that's a lot, but it would be kind of all of those things combined into one.
Listen, that all resonates a ton with me. My whole thing, my founder story, the reason I started my company and my experience as a student was I always felt like I never understood the real world purpose of why we were doing what we were doing. And so that type of experiential learning, like you said, not just on site, but also within the community, it just it creates that connection between what you're learning in the classroom and how this applies in the real world. And I think that's super important for students.
Yeah. And I was just like you, right? I didn't really know why I was learning it. I knew I needed to learn it. I might use it at some point,
Right.
but didn't have the why. And as a coach, I was always the same thing. Because when I played football, I knew what I was supposed to do on a particular play, but I didn't know what we were trying to accomplish as a whole. So when I coached, I tried to teach my athletes, here's what we're trying to do. And here's how you play into that. And, I coached offensive line. And one of the most rewarding things for me was when my linemen knew what we were trying to do so well that I didn't have to make coaching shifts during a game. They knew what to do. They knew how to adjust. They knew how to audible the blocking schemes. And when, I think of one group in particular that, man, it was a fun season, because they'd come off and I'd say, okay, what'd you see? They'd tell me what they saw, what they did, what they shifted. I'm like, okay, great. Let's keep doing it, So
that's awesome.
But that's really the whole thing around experiential learning is that kids know the why and therefore the desire to learn increases because there's meaning, there's reason. So
Exactly. And I think that's something that is really lacking from today's education system is we don't give kids the respect of teaching them that why, right? We sit them down in a classroom. Oh my God, we're in such a time crunch. There's not enough time to get through all of this. We just need to go, go, go. But we mentioned earlier, investing that time early on in the relationships, but also investing that time into understanding why. Because I think that's how you get engagement, right? If a student understands why they're doing something, and you can frame it in a way that why is actually important to them as an individual, then they're bought in, right? And I think that's a shift that needs to happen.
Yeah. So in your experience, why do you think it is that way that people feel like, hey, we don't have time, we've got to, why do you think it's that way?
I think I think incentives are pretty misaligned. I think that ways of measuring are a little archaic, and I don't think it's anyone's fault in particular. I think it was just, the origin of education and the resources that we had as a system. But, this idea that I'm a huge believer in a shift from a time-based model to a proficiency-based model, right? So right now, students' learning path is prescribed, right? This is Unit 1, Chapter 1, Lesson 1. This is going to take us this amount of time. And regardless of what happens, as soon as that time is over, we're on Unit 1, Chapter 1, Lesson 2, right? You talk about fluidity. That's why that resonated greatly with me, because there's no fluidity in that prescription, right? You're either there or you're not. And if you're not, well, you're going on anyway, right? And so it creates this idea of we need to do things within a certain amount of time. And it's almost like this prioritization of quantity over quality, right? Like, sure, you may get through the whole curriculum, but you left 50% of it back there, right? And so I think being intentional about, no, let's really get this, because that's a building block for what's next, without being so stressed about the time. And I think what'll end up happening is, like you said, that investment in understanding the why, that investment in the quality will make up for that time later on.
Yep. No, and I absolutely agree with that. And I think you kind of, things you hit on kind of align with my thoughts as well. But I really think it is our whole standardized testing culture that drives that mindset, right?
Yeah.
Teachers are so worried about student performance on the test that they feel rushed. They feel like it's all about the student's ability to regurgitate the content, when we know what's best is that they know how to apply the content, right? Yeah. And so, I would love to see a shift in our standardized testing culture in the United States.
Yeah.
That I don't know if we'll ever see that, but
I'm working on it, John. Trust me.
All right, that's good. But I think of countries like Finland that test one time. When the student's 16, and how they compare globally. So, and I think what that does is students are not as afraid to fail either, right? But if they know they're being tested every year, there becomes this fear of failure, and then they become reclusive. So, I'd love to see a shift there. But that's one thing that, in the districts I lead, I've tried to really drive that home to our teachers. That is standardized testing important? Yes, because unfortunately that's how we get judged by the community, right? And by the state. But at the end of the day, it's not what's the most important.
100%.
So our performance on standardized testing is going to be a byproduct of us using effective teaching strategies and teaching the right things and making sure that kids get what they need so that they understand those things. And so that's going to be our focus. Our focus is, are we teaching the right things? Are we using effective instructional strategies? We're not going to talk about how well did your kids do on the test. And I think that's an important mindset for educational leaders.
Yeah, I think that perspective is really important. Oh man, I'm fired up after this now. I want to talk pedagogy all day. Listen, John, I think we're wrapping up here. Where can people find you? How can people support you and the community?
Yeah, so I'm in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Our website is fayar.net. My contact information is there. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is there. Always love to talk education. Go and visit schools. You're doing exciting things. So if you're out there doing something exciting, please reach out to me. We'd love to come see what you're doing. Likewise, if there's something we can host you on, we'd love to host you. But I appreciate you having me, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks down at AAEA in Little Rock.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you joining us, John. Thanks for listening. Got an idea, a story, or a question about what we discussed today? We'd love to hear from you. To learn more about Unique Learn, follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube, and visit uniquelearn.co.